So Kubernetes is not magic. Well, it looks like magic most of the time, but I'm inspired by this tweet by Borg that containers aren't magic. And this is proved by 15 lines of bash code, which summarize that which are the kernel features which are used for the containers. And most of them, or all of them, can be used from just a bash script. So if you are interested about this in more details, I strongly recommend the zine itself, which explains all of the details that what is under the hood. And this is not only about this zine, but there are other attempts to re-implement Docker or containers with bash script. Well, it's not a re-implementation because it's just a subset without the error handling and usability and so on. But it can help to understand that what is the core essence of the containers. And what I'm interested about actually is that what is the essence of Kubernetes? Can we do something very similar for Kubernetes? Well, we need a Kubernetes cluster. And one of the easiest, or maybe, okay, let's say the one possible way to create the Kubernetes cluster is just follow the tutorial from this very famous Git repository, the Kubernetes the Hard Way from Kelsey Hightower. And this is a very interesting approach, but actually it's nothing special, just creating all of the TLS certificates and configurations and start the components one by one manually. So it's more like a getting started guide, which is supposed to be part of the original Kubernetes, right? Well, it's a specific way to start and it's very, very useful. So it's good to have it here, but there is no very big magic. Uh, let's say we have a Ruby cluster, right? Or a Ruby application. Usually we can have database, Redis, cache, so on. And we should start all of them one by one. And I think the easiest way to understand what's going on, just start all of the processes. And I think one of the easiest way to understand Kubernetes is just start all of the processes. I installed Kubernetes cluster in a lot of different ways. I started with kubeadmin. I used some Ansible-based solutions, Golang-based binary installer. I used K3s. So there are a lot of ways, but in some ways it's hard to understand what's going on. Even with the K3s, which is I think one of the best solution today to start Kubernetes cluster in your desktop or in any environment, it took some time to understand that how can you propagate all of the kubelet arguments, for example, because K3s just uses one binary and all of the Kubernetes components are compiled to one binary. So if you would like to really parameterize the one part, then you need to find out how is it possible, which is just documented. So this is the Kubernetes hard way, but and it's supposed to be hard compared to K3s, for example, which is supposed to be one of the easiest way to start Kubernetes cluster. But hard doesn't mean that it's complex. I think it's one of the most simplest way to start Kubernetes. For example, in K3s, it's easy, but under the hood, it can be quite complex. So I strongly recommend this talk. It's very, very interesting from Darren about the crazy things what they do to make K3s simple. And there are multiple interesting, yes, this is a very interesting talk. Here, for example, it explained that what kind of agent tunneling are implemented to make it more safe to start Kubernetes in any environment. Or here, it's all of the patches are explained, which are applied on top of the original K4s code base to make the end user experience or developer experience more simple. So I think the hard way is more simple, and this is what I would like to follow. And back to the original idea to rewrite the containers in Bash. It can be a good idea to rewrite Kubernetes in Bash just to understand it better, if it's possible. Well, this is not a new idea because it's already proposed even in a Kubernetes issue. Well, it's more like a joke, but it's there, and there are a few interesting links. And but at the end of this conversation, it just closed, and actually it's logged. So I think we can start to implement it, just to try it out, just to have better understanding that what's going on. So we need a cluster. The easiest way or the simplest way is to use the hard installation method. Kubernetes is the hard way, and we can start to replace the components one by one. What kind of components? Well, we can have multiple components, or we should have multiple components. In the Kubernetes, we have a few external dependencies. So first of all, we need a database. We can use just the original etcd. Case yes, you can use more databases. Let's say this is an external component. We need some container D or Docker or something, and we have the Kubernetes components. The most important part is the API server, which is just the front end for the etcd or an API server. We have a few other uh, services here, like the controller manager, which connects to the API server and tries to create, for example, the pods when you just deploy a deployment or stateful set. We have another one. Okay, let's move it to here. We have other one is the scheduler, which tries to assign a node to any pod which is scheduled. Let's do it in this way. Ooh. So, okay, controller manager. We have the scheduler. Now I can draw the arrow. Okay, on the nodes, we need at least a kubelet, which can schedule the container itself and start it, and obviously the state should be updated in the API server. We can also start the kubeproxy, which manages all of the IP tables rules, especially for the services. So these are on the nodes. So I can just group them in some way and so on. So in these videos, I would like to replace them one by one, and let's see how does it work. So maybe the easiest one to start is this one, and that can be the candidate to replace it, but that will be started in the next video. Stay tuned.